Welcome, Lady Barbara Judge. Thank you very much for joining us today at Knowledge at Wharton. It's fantastic that you've taken the time out to speak to us about what's going on in the nuclear energy industry today and what we need to be thinking about globally about how to move the industry forward. So I suppose my first question to you would be, what is happening in the industry today? Is there really a nuclear renaissance? Is it really in vogue, as a lot of people are saying?
Absolutely. Today we face three problems with respect to energy. One is energy security. Do we have enough energy? One is energy independence. Where does the energy come from? And the third is climate change. Are we going to leave a world for our grandchildren that's fit to live in? So, what do you have to do that? You have to look at the kinds of energy that are available in order to deal with all those issues. Energy security, energy independence, climate change. And nuclear is the one kind of energy that deals with everything. Because you know, nuclear energy does not emit carbon. And once you have the nuclear energy plant in your country, yes, it's expensive, but you have it. You have energy security, you have enough, and you have energy independence. It's in your country. So the answer is, it's not rocket science today. We know that we have to look at all the kinds of energy that are available, and nuclear is the first one. And the evidence of the Renaissance is, just look. The United States is thinking about now and is giving guarantees out for 4 to 6 new plants. The UK is starting a new regime in order to encourage nuclear energy. The French have been doing nuclear for years, 80% of their energy delivered by 59 nuclear power plants. The Turks, Abu Dhabi, Jordan, the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, the Egyptians. I could go on and on of all the countries around the world that are thinking about starting and in different phases of their own nuclear renaissance.
Interesting. But what would you say how nuclear energy fits in with renewable energies? Is it going to be the predominant energy source, or will it sit alongside, let's say, solar and wind and the other renewable energy sources that get a lot of press today?
Well, I certainly do agree that renewable energy gets a lot of press. Frankly, from my point of view, although they're very worthy and we ought to keep dealing and investing in renewables, they're not going to solve the problem. At the very best, people tell me it's going to be 10% of the energy. And you have to remember, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And even here in the UK, in Scotland, where there's lots of wind, sometimes you're going to have a cold, dark, still night. And when you turn on the lights, they won't go on. The thing about renewable energy is it's top-up energy. It only works when the source of energy works. Nuclear energy is baseload energy. Once you build the plant, the energy goes and goes and goes. So when you turn on the light, whether the wind is blowing or the sun is shining, it turns on. And the baseload nature of nuclear is what really gives it its place at the table in today's energy dilemma, really.
But as we've seen in the past, nuclear has been a very emotional topic at various levels for very many types of people. What have been sort of the challenges of getting nuclear accepted, or what is to get the industry going?
Well, originally, and that's about 50 or 60 years ago, right here in England, as well as in the United States, we started producing energy in nuclear power plants. And we thought it was fantastic. It was going to be energy that was too cheap to meter. And it was going along. We were building power plants. Many countries in the world were building power plants, which is why there are so many today. And then all of a sudden, two things happened. The first thing that happened was Chernobyl. Chernobyl happened, and as you know, or maybe you don't, but the Chernobyl reactor was an old technology, an accident waiting to happen. And not only that, it didn't have what's called a reactor pressure vessel at the top. Nothing, no containment vessel. So if there was a problem inside and there was nothing on the top, everything splurted outside. And then the Russians didn't tell anyone for a while. So by the time they told anyone, there was a lot of problem. The second was 3 Mile Island. Now, 3 Mile Island in the U.S., as you may remember, although you might be too young, 3 Mile Island wouldn't nearly have had the press, except 6 weeks before there was a movie called The China Syndrome with beautiful Jane Fonda. Beautiful Jane Fonda, very well regarded movie, showed a big explosion in a nuclear power plant. So when 6 weeks later there was a problem at 3 Mile Island, although there was a containment vessel, everything happened inside the reactor. When there was a problem, things closed down. 3 Mile Island was not a failure, it was a success. Nobody died, nobody was even hurt. But because of the movie, everything was magnified. So Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island together, plus the fact that the price of oil went down, effectively killed nuclear for all these many years. But today, today the price of oil is again up and volatile, and we have the climate change problem, which is so much on the agenda, which is what's bringing nuclear back on the agenda.
Right. It has certainly raised awareness again, hasn't it? And I'm just also thinking, though, a lot of people who are looking at nuclear energy also cite, though, that they say that nuclear energy is uneconomical, particularly for, let's say, the new builds, building new reactors, et cetera. What's going on with that? How do you respond to critics that say
it is
nuclear
expensive? There is no question that building a nuclear power plant is a big infrastructure project, and it costs a lot of money. And frankly, it's costing more money than people thought it was going to. But that's because we haven't built one in such a long time.
Okay.
We all believe that after they build the first and the second and the third and the fourth, it will get less expensive just because we know how to do it better. But frankly, the other point is, once you put that money in a big power plant, the energy that comes out is relatively low-cost energy, and it's a stable price, so people can make their plans. It doesn't gyrate like oil. And frankly, people tell me that nuclear energy is cost-effective at about $50 a barrel. Now, frankly, $50 a barrel is a price of oil we haven't seen, except for just a few minutes ago in the recession, for a long time. And nobody believes that oil will be about $50 a barrel for any sustained period. So funnily enough, nuclear may become a low-cost alternative. One other point, renewables are expensive. They are not inexpensive. We are spending millions and millions of pounds to try to prove the technology of renewables, whereas the technology of nuclear is proven. So we don't have all those research and development costs that must be capitalized into the price of renewables.
So going from whether it's economical or uneconomical, what would you say sort of the issue is around policy making, though, that also drives the industry?
Well, there are a lot of issues around the policy of nuclear. You're right, the price is one of them. It's expensive. It's expensive compared to fossil fuels, but frankly, we can't have fossil fuels for the rest of our life or we're going to kill the atmosphere. There are other issues. There's a political issue. You have to have a country that agrees to put nuclear on the agenda and that it's not a political issue. So if the Labour government thinks it's okay today, we can't have the Conservative government in a different position tomorrow if they are there tomorrow, because nobody will invest today if they don't think it's going to be there tomorrow. So we have to remove it from politics. The other issue is planning. Where are you going to put this? Nobody wants a nuclear power plant in their backyard, or so they say. In actual fact, that's wrong. People who have nuclear power plants in their backyard love them. The people in Dounreay, there's up in the top of Scotland, there's a big power plant which we are decommissioning at the moment. Those people are panicked that we're going to decommission them out of life. There'll be no jobs, no schools, no culture. Big infrastructure projects bring big money. They bring infrastructure money and they bring benefits to the community. So in actual fact, all the places that had power plants in the UK are the ones that want them again. But planning is an issue. The next one is price. You already discussed that. People. There's a skill shortage. There's no question. People haven't been building nuclear power plants for years. You just said it. They haven't been running them. All the people that know what they're doing, they all have gray hair. I'm always amazed when I give speeches that they all have gray hair. The fact is, it used to be, when I was young at Penn, that being a nuclear physicist was the coolest thing to be. It was really sexy. That was like rocket science. Today, if we graduate engineers, the people at Wharton tell me the dream team is an engineering undergraduate degree and then an MBA. And then you know what we do? We take these engineers and we make them financial engineers. Well, frankly, we need them back on the power plants, building, designing, being real engineers in the real economy. But at the moment, we have to find a whole new generation that believes nuclear is sexy, engineering is sexy, science is sexy. So that's another issue, which is the people issue.
How can that be addressed?
Well, we are trying to address it here in the UK. I'm sure we're doing it in America too, but in the UK we have a National Skills Academy for Nuclear, which we've established. We have chairs in Manchester University, in Imperial College. Various places around our country are seeing the need to train nuclear engineers and are doing it. Because we have to train the engineers to run them and the engineers to build them.
Terrific.
I also think it would be great for women.
Great. You had mentioned earlier about the countries that are exploring nuclear energy and making some headway in introducing it in their countries. Middle East, I'm intrigued about what your thoughts are about why nuclear energy in the Middle East.
The Middle East is a wonderful story. Actually, I will say that about 3 years ago I gave a speech in Qatar and I said I thought that the GCC countries as the perfect place to build nuclear because they didn't have the problems of politics. You know, there's a strong central government. The sheikh says we'll have one here and we'll have one here. The price, well, you know, until recently they had a lot of money in the Middle East. This is the story. The people, you know, they could build things. They build schools. The planning, as I said, you can have one here and one here. So what happened? Well, the people in Qatar said, Lady Judge is crazy. There will never be a nuclear power plant in the GCC countries. Not 9 months later, I was in Abu Dhabi. And in Abu Dhabi, they were deciding, very, very enlightened government, that although they have a lot of oil, soon enough it would run out. And second of all, they wanted to have a diversified source of energy. So they're building Masdar City, which is a renewable city. They are looking at other energy sources, and they're having a big push on nuclear. They've hired some very good people. They're doing everything right. They've signed up to all the international conventions, and the ruler is saying, right, we can afford to build the state-of-the-art nuclear power. We can afford to build state-of-the-art technical universities in order to address the problems that you and I have been talking about. So Abu Dhabi says they're going to have the first power plant open by 2017.
2017. Okay, fantastic. Interesting. Okay, well, good. And then looking, though, sort of at you, Lady Barbara Judge, and looking at why the nuclear sector, you joined the UK Atomic Energy Authority in 2002 as a director, if I'm correct, and a few years later you were appointed chairman. But that was quite a departure for you. You had been a lawyer, you made a name for yourself in the banking sector. So what attracted you to this sector or to that company in particular?
Well, the truth is, you know, I'd been an SEC commissioner in the 80s, so I liked working for the government. And at that moment in my life, I'd had 2 businesses sold prematurely. One, the venture capitalist sold, and second was taken over in essentially a hostile takeover. And I thought, what am I going to do? I want to work till I'm 86 like my mother. And so I thought, you know, I'd like to go back to the government. I really enjoyed it when I worked in the American government. And I called a headhunter. And I said, do you have anything in the government? And the headhunter said, well, Barbara, we do have one job at the moment, which is a seat on the board of the Atomic Energy Authority. And I said, that is not for me. I didn't do science. And the man said, a charming man, he said, oh, that's all right. What they want is a business person who can run the audit committee. And you could do that. So, you know how you get the jobs that you're really not looking for. I went to the interview, and they said, now why do you want this job? And I said, well, I really don't. I really just want to work for the government, and you're what's going. But I have strong academic credentials, and I'm a lawyer. And lawyers learn things. And if you give me this job, I promise you that I will learn it so well that when I find the job in the government that I really want, I hope you people will be my references. And do you know, they gave it to me. And not only that, a couple of years later, I found another job in the government I wanted. They were my references. I got that job. I did it for a while.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting. Now, just to wrap up this fascinating conversation, in fact, I'd like to sort of explore about what lies ahead for 2010. In your view, as chairman of the UK Atomic Energy Authority, in fact, what do you think are going to be the main issues and policy priorities for the nuclear energy industry as a whole globally in 2010?
Well, you put your hands on a number of them. First of all, the economics. We are going to have to get to a position where you can build a nuclear power plant with certainty as to the cost and certainty as to the time it will take, because the 2 that are being built now in the West are taking more time than people thought and are costing more. But we will. The Abu Dhabi proposition will, I believe, really will work, and 2017 will come. As you know, the Chinese are building them now. The Indians will be building them. We'll get better at it. Here in the UK, we need to set a framework so that investors will come in and, in fact, do these big infrastructure projects that we were talking about.
You want the private sector coming in.
That's the way we've set it up here. We say the government is not building. At this moment, the government is not going to build these power plants. The private sector will build them, but we'll do a framework so that we'll help the planning problems, we'll help the political problems, we'll set out places where we believe nuclear is appropriate, and we'll put in place everything they need to make it an economic proposition.
Interesting, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for your time.
Such a pleasure. Thank you very much.